Rams house. The 2026 NFL draft is in the books, but our rookie class is still developing as Les Snead and Sean McVay continue to put it together. On today's episode of the Rams Report presented by Prize Picks, we're going to go through all of the undrafted free agents that have currently been signed by the Los Angeles Rams, at least the ones that we know about right now. There may be some more trickling in over the next couple of days, and we'll talk about them when those guys do ultimately get signed, or if whatever happens, we at this point do not know. But let's talk about what we know right now. Let's talk about the numbers game right here. The Rams roster count coming into the draft, or out of the draft rather, was 68, with their rookies now accounted for. They had 22 remaining spots on the roster, and they have signed 18 undrafted free agents to this point. Let's now go through every single one of those 18 guys. Matthew Caldwell, quarterback out of Texas. We're going to deep dive on him in a minute. Jalen Logan Redding, defensive tackle out of Minnesota. Nyzeir Fourqurean, corner out of Wisconsin. Eddie Walls, he is an edge defender out of Houston. Bryce Henderson, an offensive tackle from Vandy. Dan Villari, a defensive tackle out of, a tight end out of Syracuse. Wesley Bailey, an outside linebacker out of Louisville. Rohan Jones, a tight end out of Arkansas. And I will note on Rohan Jones, I was speaking with one of our big Arkansas fans in the office, Trizzy Trace, our Saints host, and he is a big fan of what Rohan could potentially bring to this team. Nikhai Hill-Green, who we're going to deep dive on as well, the linebacker out of Alabama, and Jaxson Moi, defensive lineman out of Tennessee. Couple more guys here. Payton Zdroik, defensive tackle out of Air Force. Nick Anderson, defensive back out of Wake Forest. Alzillian Hamilton, a corner from Fresno State. Darryl Peterson, an outside linebacker out of Wisconsin. Drey Norwood, a corner from Missouri. Austin Blaske, an offensive lineman. He's a little versatile, but I think he mostly plays guard out of North Carolina. Chad Linberg, a center from North Carolina. They must have liked the North Carolina offensive line this year. And Dean Connors, a running back out of Houston. Peyton and Dean, we're going to deep dive on a little bit here, but let's start with the quarterback of the group, Matthew Caldwell. This one's interesting, guys. If you're not familiar with Caldwell, had a pretty winding journey in college football. He got started at Jackson State, transferred to off the dome, I want to say it was Bowling Green, bounced around to a couple different spots before ultimately landing at Texas, and he was only ever the full-time starter for like 10 games of his college career, and that was in 2024. He showed a little bit during that stretch, but at the end of the day, Caldwell was the backup when he played at the highest level at Texas. He did do solidly in relief of Arch Manning in a couple games there, but I think at the end of the day, Caldwell is mostly here as a tryout opportunity. I think his contract is probably just running through rookie mini camp, and he'll get maybe some looks in there, and if he could show something, maybe he'll land a spot, but unlikely to be a significant contributor or even, in my opinion, make it to preseason because there's just already so many quarterbacks on the roster at this point. We're going to keep diving on a few more of these undrafted free agents, but before we do, I got to give a shout out to the sponsor of today's video, guys, and that's America's #1 sports picks app, Prize Picks. If you love daily fantasy sports or you just want to make watching sports even more exciting than it already is, you've got to try out Prize Picks. It's a great time to get started on Prize Picks too, with playoff basketball in full swing and the baseball season well underway. There's no better place to cash in on all that action than Prize Picks. Just pick 2 to 6 players and select more or less on their stat projections, whether it's points, rebounds, assists, three-pointers, or others across all sports. If you're more of a baseball guy, you can choose from hits, home runs, and strikeouts. Prize Picks also has awesome social features that allow you to easily tailor fade your friends or your favorite creators, including me and producer Mike. I'm Jackson Durham with no spaces on there, and you guys can drop a follow and see all my lineups, including this one for the season-long projections that Prize Picks has. We're going with the less on Fernando Mendoza, the less on Jeremiah Love, and the more on Jordan Tyson. So you guys can tell me on this lineup. You could fade me on this lineup. Whatever you do, just do it with our friends over at Prize Picks. And if you're a new user, download the Prize Picks app today and use code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to receive $50 in lineups. That's code HMA when you play your first $5 lineup to get an extra $50 in lineups with Prize Picks. The clickable link to download the app is in the comments and the description below. Let's talk about another one of the undrafted free agents that stood out to me, Payton Zdroik. And I will tell you guys, and this is coming from a place, I'm a big fan of the college football video games. I love to do rebuilds in these, and Zdroik immediately stood out to me. I'd watched a little bit of his tape, but I remember when I did my Air Force rebuild, this was my guy. So he immediately stood out, and the tape is fun with this dude. He is a pass rushing defensive tackle at the end of the day. He's not really big enough to be a run plugger, which is something you typically get with the military academy guys, because their fitness regulations usually keep those guys from being enormous dudes. But he, at the end of the day, is fast enough to get after the passer. At least at the Mountain West level, he was productive. He is 8th all time in sacks for Air Force. And he, I think, comes in just as solid depth for this defensive tackle room. He's going to compete for a roster spot alongside Tim Keenan as well, who we drafted in the 7th round. Another one of the Alabama guys that we brought in, who we'll talk about another one in just 1 minute. But Zdroik, in my opinion, offers a fun extra addition in depth, because while Tim Keenan is mostly that kind of run defender type, Zdroik is the complete opposite. He's really not going to offer you a lot in run defense, but what he can do is get upfield and get after that quarterback. Let's talk about another member of the Crimson Tide joining the Rams here, and it's Nikhai Hill-Green, a linebacker, and he's an interesting one because he wasn't really on the radar for me too much, but the more I dive into his tape, I realize he could fill a role here if he can shine in camp, in rookie mini camp, as a coverage linebacker. Because that was the main skill set that he offered Alabama during his time there, was what he could do, especially against tight ends going over the middle of the field. He's a really nice coverage guy in zone and in man match. So I feel like if he can stand out, that's something that's missing from this Rams depth chart at inside linebacker. And if Nikhai Hill-Green can be that guy, I think he has a solid chance of, among these UDFAs, of landing a spot with this Rams team. Let's talk about one more dude here, Dean Connors, because he's pretty fun. This guy is freaky athletic. The RAS number on him, I believe, is 9.62 out of 10. A 4.3 40-yard dash guy, incredibly speedy. Someone I think if he can stick on this roster, and you see the production last year from Houston, he could have a fun gadget role at the end of the day. I think we're definitely going to see some stuff schemed up for him in the preseason at the very least, some opportunities for him to get the ball in his hands. Because you saw that last year at Houston. When he was on, but the production is incredibly inconsistent. That's the thing with him. He's got 100-yard games where he'll stack it up, and then games where he is just a complete non-factor. So he needs to become more game-to-game consistent to really have a good chance of hanging on to an NFL roster. But you guys let me know, which of the undrafted free agents that the Rams picked up do you think was the best or has the best chance of hanging on to this Rams roster? It's a very deep team. So it's an uphill battle for every single one of these guys. It's going to be an uphill battle for some of our later round draft picks as well to ultimately hang on. But you never know. Talent is found across the draft and outside of the draft every single year in the NFL. We know that better than anybody. So much day 3 success for this team. So interested to see where these rookies can go. We'll be covering every step of their journey through rookie minicamp all the way through the offseason and into next year's preseason, all the way through the year and many years beyond that. So don't go anywhere. Subscribe to the Rams Report today, and we'll see you the next time.